Lifting up our hearts to heaven, let us imitate the hierarchy of the angels. Let us follow Jesus Christ. So again, I wanted to share quotes with all of you that I've been pondering about since I got an email a couple of days ago. And this email has been shared with you. It was shared right away, and then with the bulletin last night that was emailed out. And as per always, if you know people who aren't getting it, please let me know. The email was encouraging words from Father Lawrence Barriger about being in sort of the desert of Lent, being in the desert outside of the church, this place in which we are bereft of God, or so we feel. And the thing to think about, and I'll sort of extrapolate on this as I go through the quotes here, is what we are doing while outside of the church, outside of the four walls. The church building is a wonderful place to direct us to God, but what are we, the church, doing? It is us who are the church. And so it's a new and a challenging way of thinking about what we are going through as people, what we are dealing with as a society and as a world and as a culture. And so the first quote that I wanted to share with you is from St. John of Kronstadt, in which he says that afflictions are a great teacher. Afflictions show us our weaknesses, passions, and the need for repentance. Afflictions cleanse the soul, they make it sober. As from drunkenness, they bring down grace into the soul. They soften the heart. They inspire us with a loathing for sin and strengthen us in faith, hope, and virtue. And I wanted to focus on that as sort of a grander way. If we look at his quote, he could have been talking about some affliction that we have. And I could have gotten sick, and what am I meant to learn from that sickness? God didn't give it to me. God doesn't do bad things. And God didn't sort of let all of this happen as if he just doesn't care about us, as if he abandoned us. But that doesn't mean that there is not a lesson to be learned in the afflictions that we deal with. And our current affliction is the one that we deal with as a society. Not just looking at a sickness that has come upon us, but the results of that sickness as sort of a grand whole, that we can't get to church, that we can't be together. And we are meant to learn something from it. If you cannot be in church, are you still committing yourself to God? If your salvation hinges entirely on being within these four walls, then these four walls are more or less useless, because the church and God are in your heart, are in you. Now, the building itself is beautiful. It helps us to direct our prayer to God. It gives us a common meeting place. It inspires us with what we are meant to understand about the heavenly kingdom. The beauty and the glory of God, the smell of the incense, everything that engages us about the liturgy. But if this alone is the salvation, then this building has become something far more than it should be. It is a holy place, don't get me wrong, but it is not the sole purpose of our salvation. It comes from God alone and God within our hearts. And so we are meant to learn from these afflictions. They show us our weaknesses, one of which could be this reliance on the four walls of this building being something more than they actually are. That they reveal to us our passions. I'm sure that all of us are dealing with a new slew of passions being at home and cooped up with people. It's very easy to get angry at people that we are sort of stuck with. So what passions are coming up? Are we in our sort of ease at being home, even though it is difficult not to get out? Are we becoming gluttonous? Are we becoming lazy? Are we becoming despondent and losing hope when we are not called to? And then, furthermore, this is meant to cleanse our soul, to make it sober as if rising from drunkenness. I say this many times, that it is our plight as Christians, especially those who have been in the Orthodox Church for our whole lives, to wake up, to recognize that there is something more that is always going on, to sort of snap out of it and recognize that there is a glory of God that you can be a part of, and that sheer attendance doesn't count. And God's not a college teacher who's just making sure that you're there for class on time. That if this is to be something, we are meant to snap out of it. We are to rise in sobriety as if we've been drunk this whole time. Let this sober us up that we need to do something, that we need to be thankful for the church that we have, because it can be so easily taken away from us. If not by some natural disaster, a hurricane, a fire that burns down our church, who knows? But it can be taken from us. This is not as secure as we like to believe it is. And so if it is taken from us, are we secure? Is our faith unshaken? We have to snap out of it. We have to wake up and grow in our faith and recognize that it's something to be beyond these four walls. And to continue on with that, I wanted to bring up our second quote. This is from St. Luke of Simferopol and Crimea. And it is not right to speak of the former years and to bless them and to curse our own age. We must know that in every age and in every place, people who actually seek their salvation find it. And it's very easy to sort of look at this in our current affliction and say, oh, things were so much better before. And it's so much easier to look at our current era, despite the coronavirus, and say things were better back in the day. We were holier back then. God was closer to us. And it's easy to look back at the Bible and say, oh, the people were talking to God all the time. He was just shouting from the clouds at them. Obviously, our age is terror, and we curse it. Because it's proven over and over again by saints appearing among us, being a part of our societies, being people that we can meet, that those who seek salvation find it. And if we are to look at our affliction and to curse it, and say that things are so bad now, that we obviously can't get to God. We can't get to church, so we can't get to God. We're stuck. But we've done something wrong. Because people who are still out seeking their salvation, whether in their own homes, whether watching online, whether they can't watch online at all, but they are diligently saying their prayers as if they were here. The idea is that those who seek their salvation are going to find it. And we are meant to be a part of that number. We are meant to include ourselves among the people that are constantly seeking out and working for their salvation. It is easy to become despondent, and I know that I have as well, in looking at our current situation, and feeling the weighty effects of not being together. Of not being together in our Christian fellowship, of not being together to worship and to pray together in a physical sense. We rely on that as human beings. It is something necessary. However, as I've said before, we are not, as Christians, permitted to not have hope because we have Christ. We literally pray at the end of every service, "Glory to you, O Christ, our God, our hope. Glory to you." If we have our hope, we have Christ, we cannot let ourselves become hopeless and despondent. And as we deal with this, as we go through this Lenten desert that's been put upon us, and it always is, Lent, especially as we grow closer and closer to Holy Week, always becomes more and more like a desert. This idea that we are waiting for the fast to be done, that things are constantly like in anticipation. There's something greater that we're waiting for, and there is a sameness to it. I had mentioned last night, as I was dealing with some business with John Leposki, that I think this is the 4th or 5th iteration of lentil soup that Pawnee and I have gone through. There is a sameness to Lent, and it becomes a very deserted place. And we feel that sameness in being stuck in our homes. We feel that desert, just as Father Lawrence put in his beautiful letter to us that is also meant to inspire hope. But in that desert, we are meant to, because we can look at nothing else, because there is a sameness all around us, to begin to look inward and to sort of figure out, is salvation in me? Is the church in me? It is not the building that is the church, it is the people that fill the building. We are the church. And do I have that church in me? Because in this age that some might curse, if you seek your salvation, you will find it. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Glory be to Jesus Christ.